When I was a young child, way before any of you were born, and when all round here was green fields, there used to be an almost compulsory radio program called Listen with Mother. And it began with the words, "Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin." And that went all the way back, I think, to the dawn of our civilization, indeed pre-civilization. I like to think of the human family sitting in a cave. They've had a long day hunting and gathering, and the fire is outside to protect them from animals, and they've got this new extraordinary thing called language, and they tell each other stories. It's one of the most magical things that language can do. And hearing a story told to you takes us back to our mothers and back to the mother of all civilizations, I suppose. And those questions we asked were often about mysterious things that we saw. Fire coming from mountains. We heard rumbles in the sky sometimes when it rained. And what was the thing that pushed petals out of dry twigs at springtime? These were called gods because they were mysterious activities. And the gods slowly took on personalities, and they did things. They created humanity, and human beings lived with the gods and talked to the gods. And sometimes they were interfered with by the gods, and bred with the gods, made demigod heroes. And that's why I think the stories, which we call myths, of gods and heroes, are so perfect for telling rather than reading. Though I hope if people enjoy reading off the page, they do that too. But there's something splendid about Greek myth and the audiobook, today's cave with the human family. So I'm going to read you now a little part of the adventures of Odysseus, which involves the gods, because as in Homer, in my book, I show how the gods debate what's going on with Odysseus. They tend to take sides. When you have lots of gods rather than one, they wonderfully represent different attitudes. And Athena is the goddess of wisdom, and she loves Odysseus. And she's very annoyed that Odysseus happens to be a prisoner on an island, and he's been so for 7 years, a prisoner of the nymph Calypso. Well, she is extremely cross with her father, Zeus, the king of the gods. "I must ask, dear father," said Athena to Zeus, "when will your plan come in fully to being?" My plan? What plan?" "Your plan for all humanity, to be ruled by none but tyrants, criminals, and fools. Your plan to ensure that justice is banished from the earthly realm. Your plan to usher in an age without treaties, without promises, honour, or law. That plan, a plan that finally has come into being in every detail in our day, it would seem." But Zeus looked around the other gods in puzzlement. I don't have such a plan, do I?" They shrugged and shook their heads. Athena was having one of her rhetorical moments. Might as well get it over with. "Because if one of the best, wisest, and most just mortals walking the earth at this time is to be cruelly imprisoned for years and years, then what can justice and honour mean? What can anything mean?" Athena cried. "Let rivers stand still in their course. Let fruit fall upwards from trees. Let fire chill the bones. Let the very—" Zeus groaned. "Oh, it's Odysseus. This is all about that damned Odysseus again. Damned is right. The man has been held captive by an immortal for 7 years. Damned for sure. To a mortal, 7 years can be an unendurably long time. 7 years entirely alone. Damned indeed. No ship, no shipmates. Just Calypso weaving a prison for him with her perverted magic. Damned, damned, and double damned. Meanwhile, in far Ithaca, evil men are plotting mischief against his house, his son, Telemachus, a noble youth who has done no harm to man or God, has spent nearly 3 years travelling abroad for news of his father. How those evil men would love to see that boy dead, and Penelope forced into matrimony. And for what great trespass is Odysseus to be damned? Why, for the sin of wanting to be home, for the monstrous crime of having the wit and imagination to find a way to end that terrible 10-year war. Damned for the transgression. But, just a moment. Wasn't it you who begged me in the first place to send a storm to confound Odysseus and the other Greeks returning home? Oh, for heaven's sake, Father! That was 10 years ago, which is a very long time. Oh, very well. Very well, very well. Let it be known that Odysseus is to be allowed home with all possible speed and ease. Hermes, go down and inform Calypso of my will. The son of Laertes is to leave her island forthwith. No divine hindrance, but no divine aid for him either. She is to fashion a simple vessel of some kind. Well, what are you waiting for? Hermes slipped on his golden sandals, raised his staff, tipped his low-brimmed helmet, and was gone. Zeus turned to Athena. As for the boy Telemachus, you have already visited him as Mentes and guided him as Mentor. You can protect him again if it pleases you. Now, Ganymede, a draught of nectar. Hebe, a cooling cloth to my brow. Apollo, music. And Athena, yes, dear Papa, you can leave me. Yes, it's all about Odysseus getting home. To the Greeks, there was a special word they used for the journey home. I suppose, as so many of them were warriors who went abroad, but even more were fishers who went on boats for long periods, the dream of home was a very important one to them, and to modern Greeks, actually. A lot of them might live in cities like Athens, but who come from a village in the country, or very often from a particular island, and they have a sense of that home. And their word is nostos. In the 17th century, a Greek academic coined a special word to describe the homesickness that Swiss mercenaries were feeling during the 30 Years' War. They pined not for the fields, but for the Alps and the valleys of home. And the word he coined was from nostos, which I've told you means that journey home, that dream of home, and the Greek for pain, which is algia, as in analgesic we have for a painkiller. And his word was nostalgia, which we use a lot today, more to describe a sort of pining and a longing for the past than for home, but the past is a kind of home for us. But the first great hero that we know of in all art, if you like to put it that way, certainly in all Western art, is Odysseus, who takes 10 years to get home, 7 of which he finds himself trapped on this island of Ogygia, which is owned and run by Calypso, a nymph who's an immortal. So there is Odysseus in his usual position on the island. A wide field of blue above a wide field of darker blue. Odysseus sat on his favourite rock and stared out. Sometimes the swift flight of a cormorant, gannet or tern might interrupt the purity of his view. Less often, a fishing vessel laboured with agonizing slowness from left to right or right to left. But usually, as now, he was left with an empty screen which could be peopled with the living and the dead. Diomedes, the dearest of his brothers in arms, whom in a moment of madness he had once attacked with a knife. Diomedes would be back in Argos now. Achilles was treading the fields of Elysium in bliss. Agamemnon would be home and happy too. Menelaus and Helen in Sparta once more. The lords and princes of Thessaly, Thebes, Corinth and Crete, all home, all but Odysseus of Ithaca. Why did the gods despise him? He had thought himself on good terms with Athena, at least. He made the proper offerings, credited the gods with any successes that came his way. Most men would call him blessed. On this island paradise, an immortal nymph of transcendent beauty, serving him, pleasing him, loving him every day. He did his duty, but thought himself cursed. She knew that wherever his body might be, his mind was always in Ithaca. And now he felt her as much as heard her. Still staring out to sea, weeping? He said nothing. Perhaps you will answer me if I ask you another question. How would you like to leave this island? Odysseus said nothing. I have decided the time has come. Take some tools and some wood and make timbers and a raft. I have cloth enough to make you a sail. Son of Laertes, at least face me when I bring you the news you've waited 7 years to hear. Odysseus turned to her. What fresh trick is this? There are no tools of bronze on this island with which I could cut wood. You've made sure of that. You will find them, all the same. A chest of axes, saws, and knives is now outside my cave. I'll make it so. I'll give you food, water, and wine enough for your journey home. Tell me, how old is your Penelope now? Just a year short of my own age, he mumbled through a mouthful of bread. They had gone to her cave, and she was feeding him. Calypso examined her nails. I wonder how she'll look. Odysseus swallowed the bread. A smile spread across his face. Well now, let me see. To the lines etched by the passing of the years, you must add all the cares that have haunted her for 20 years, looking after my father and mother, Laertes and Anticlea, as they grow older and more infirm, tending to the kingdom, bringing up my son Telemachus, worrying if that wretch of a husband of hers will ever come home. All this will have carved more and deeper lines into her face. She was lovely when she was young, so lovely, but never a beauty that could match yours, Calypso. It was a human beauty, far inferior to the appeal of nymphs. Somehow to Calypso's ears the word nymphs sounded almost like an insult. Penelope's youth will have faded by now, for sure, Odysseus went on, but it will have transformed into something deeper. She will have the kind of depth of beauty only women have, a woman's fine grace, personality, character. No, you needn't worry. Penelope could never match a girl like you for youth and beauty. You might even think her ugly. When I see her, I will know that she is Penelope, my wife. Calypso compressed her lips. Another thought struck her. I do what I can to make this island delightful, you know. We are protected from the storms and high winds. When it comes, the rain falls in a light drizzle that is enough to freshen the earth and cleanse body and spirit. No wolves or bears threaten here. Flowers of every colour bloom and send their sweet perfume into the air. Pomegranates, lemons, grapes, olives, and figs can be picked warm from the trees. The hushing of the surf and the trilling of the crickets lull you to sleep in the evening, and in the morning the music of the birds welcomes you to another perfect day. But I suppose this Ogygia is a poor place indeed compared to Ithaca. Odysseus openly laughed. Oh, my goodness! You've never seen such a rocky, scrubby, barren, unforgiving spot, he said. It's all our farmers can do to grow weeds there, let alone cereals and fruit. We have the sourest wine, the raggediest sheep, the scrawniest cattle of any island in the wide Ionian Sea. Trees and houses are blown down every year in the gales. Some years the rain never comes and the earth turns to sand. Other years the whole island slops with mud. Believe me, Ithaca is no Ogygia. But it's something else. His eyes now filled with tears, and the word came out hoarsely. Home. That's Nostos. So Penelope, that wife whom he loves so dearly and whom he holds in his mind, not perhaps, it must be said, in a modern way, because Calypso is not the only female with whom Odysseus consorts in those 10 years, it has to be admitted. Ideas of monogamy were perhaps different in the mythic era. But nonetheless, their love each for the other is as real as you can encounter in the most modern novel, and it speaks to us, I think, through time. And Odysseus is not the only one who's smart. He's not the only one who's cunning. He's not the only one who has an imagination and ideas that's superior to the average, shall we say. Penelope can match him perfectly. And she is, as is well known, I think, in that 10 years, besieged by suitors for her hand. There's no other word for suitors. It sounds very sort of, technical or strange. It's not a word we use very often in common English, but there isn't another word like it. It doesn't have a synonym, an exact duplicate. There's just suitors. Petitioners for her hand is even worse. I don't know what you would say. People gagging for it is just revolting, and it's not quite right. They want to marry her because they want the kingdom of Ithaca. Everyone believes that Odysseus is dead. That's the point. And so these kings and princes and lords from other islands and even the mainland come over and say, you've got to marry me now. You've got to. Because it's all about property, as we know from Jane Austen and Bridgerton and from all kinds of eras in human life. Women are very often the ones who sort of carry the land and the riches. Anyway, Penelope has had an idea about how to choose from the suitors, or at least that's what the suitors are led to believe. She's at the palace in Ithaca and she's come out of her room. Penelope had appeared at the top of the stairs and was making her way slowly down. As more became aware of her, the suitors fell silent, one by one. Eumaeus and Philoetius had come in from the kitchens to sit at their table below the suitors. They watched the queen descend. "Wonders will never cease," said Philoetius. "She never comes down," said Eumaeus. When Penelope came finally into view, they all saw that she was carrying a large cushion. A square of silk was draped over it, concealing whatever was underneath. 2 handmaidens followed her down, each bearing a wooden chest. "Gentlemen, every day you push me harder and harder for a decision. Which of you shall I choose for a husband, and how do I choose? Will it be on the basis of character? Hardly so. None of you possesses the smallest shred of honour or decency. Will it be on the basis of your property and wealth? I have no need of your trash, nor does my son. Honest poverty in a herdsman's hut appeals to us a great deal more than a life of opulence in the grandest of palaces belonging to such as you. Or do I, who was married to Odysseus of Ithaca, select you for your wisdom, acumen, and intelligence? Please, don't make me laugh. Besides, even if I were to pick you for any of those qualities, they would be hard to test you for, one against the other. Which brings me to strength. A test of both brute strength and skill is easily undertaken, and I know just the way." She pulled away the square of silk. "Here is my husband's bow. And here are his quiver and arrows." Penelope raised them above her head so that all could see. "This was a gift from Ephitus, son of Eurytus, whose weapon it was." Yes, gentlemen, this was the very bow of Eurytus, grandson of the archer god Apollo. Eurytus, the master bowman who taught the hero god Heracles how to shoot. Eumaeus, Philoetius, lay them on the table. When Eumaeus took the bow, sharp memories of Odysseus drawing and shooting came flooding back to him, and he could not help but weep as he nuzzled the bow against his cheek. "Gods alive!" scoffed Antinous, the leader of the suitors. "The old fool is blubbing. Put it on the table as you were told, or I'll kick your ass from here to Corinth." Eumaeus laid the bow down as tenderly and reverently as if it were a sacred relic, which to him it was. Philoetius set the quiver and arrows next to it. "Now," said Penelope, "my handmaidens will show you something else." The handmaidens stepped forward and opened the chests they had been carrying. Each contained, neatly packed, 6 iron axe heads. Each was double-bladed in the Minoan style, with a hole between the blades, above the socket in which the haft would be fitted. "It is very simple," said Penelope. "Whichever one of you here is capable of stringing the bow, drawing it, and shooting an arrow clean through all 12 axe heads will be my husband. So come with me on this final legendary voyage. Odyssey is coming soon in hardback, ebook, and audiobook read by me, Stephen Fry.